Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the SOS podcast. And I hope everybody had a happy New Year's and a great holidays. We took a little sabbatical, 2 week break to enjoy our time with our family and our loved ones. And I hope you guys did the same. This is your host, Michael Nijma, January 2nd, 2021. Joined by me also is our other host, John Betts. Say hi, everyone, John.
Hello, hi everybody. Happy New Year.
I'm hoping that everybody had a great, New Year's Eve and holidays, and hoping that we continue with this podcast and you continue to listen to this podcast as well. So, for today, the agenda for today's podcast is that we want to bring out what everybody has New Year's resolutions. So, we're hoping with this podcast, we want to bring to light what we want to do with our local government and what changes we that needs to be made to help everybody that's unhoused during these harsh pandemic times. So, John, if you want to start out.
Okay. Well, yeah, I guess if I was the city and the county, I'd have a lot of shame how I've been conducting myself, looking out for the unhoused people and the poorest people in our community. Uh, like in the midst of a pandemic, then they want to done this whole thing of kept closing a lot of the other shelters, even though originally their dictates are supposed to have less concentration in congregate shelters. Instead, now they've closed practically all the shelters except the one great big one called South Hall. So that's like 300 people all having to be congregating, coming and going, and coexisting every day. That's exactly the wrong prescription for the management of this COVID situation. There should be more shelters, and they could have some alternative models of like the typical shelter, set up where then the people have to leave. Maybe now during this COVID, they're letting them just be there all the time. But the main thing is they still having to keep forcing them all into this one big concentrated shelter is exactly the wrong prescription. And plus, it's just located sort of in the downtown San Jose area. There's a whole lot of other areas of San Jose that have unhoused people. There should be shelter situations throughout this city, not to mention the county. And then they're trying to make up for it by allowing people in camps and so forth to kind of shelter in place in the camps. But not everybody's got the wherewithal to be even set up in a camp. I've been down on the Felipe Street where there's the camps there is all along both couple sides of one main just industrial street, and so a lot of the other camps are usually kind of in a woodsy area, but there it's just right on industrial street. Some of the people will go walk down there. Some don't even have a tent. They don't even have one they made out of plastic bags and pallets or anything like that. Like some of the more enterprising ones they manage to build out of scrounged materials. But some don't even have that. Some don't even have like a mattress. I mean, they don't have a pad or anything. They're just literally lying on the concrete sidewalk, sleeping on the sidewalk. They don't even have a blanket. So, how can the city have any conscience when it's allowing that to go on? And then some of us were involved in putting on the memorial for the unhoused people that died this year. So we had it. It was allowed to be in front of the county hall, county building for one day. I didn't see Sam Licardo ever show up there. I didn't see any of the city council people ever show up.
Wait, so
Yeah.
sorry, so John, to kind of review that first one, you said was basically what you would like is more and better shelters instead of closing them down. Bring out more of the shelters and bring out more help with supplies, tents, and all that stuff. Right? Essentially,
Yeah.
the first one.
And they also have this things called warming centers where, like, they would have it in throughout the town, like in libraries, community center buildings, other buildings like that. But now this year, they're not even having any of those open, and I really don't think that's cool. And
Okay.
that's some of our other advocate people have been complaining about that to the city and county
So
people.
for the second one, you want more warming
Warming
centers.
centers,
Okay.
and because it's freezing cold at night. So that, and then there's also that danger that they're going to sweep all the people over Felipe and see. So the old, just like they did at the jungle, sweep everybody when there's nowhere set up for them to go, and then think that was a big solution.
So for number three, we'd like that for there to be no more of these random sweeps that occur, that
Yeah.
that have already people are unhoused in more dire situations than they already are. So that's one of the three.
Yeah. Well, another thing, I think they should do a lot better job of putting out wash stations and porta potties, because I've gone around with the group called Urge that we hand out COVID supplies, COVID prevention supplies, and food and everything else. Sometimes we're the only people that ever go out and give anything out to a lot of people in the South South San
So
Jose.
sorry.
And there's a lot of pretty large camps out there, and they don't. None of them have even a wash station or a porta toilet, even after all this time. Even though the leaders of our several advocate groups keep telling the housing department and hey, you need to put some wash stations and porta potties out at X, Y, and Z camp. Now, 4 or 5 months later, they still haven't done it.
Okay, that's good. Very good point. Yeah, that's very unsanitary,
Yeah.
especially during a pandemic.
Right. And then also we have more and more places like restaurants and all that where you can buy takeout food. But then all of a sudden having them all say, oh, no one can use the restroom. Well, I think if they want our money, they ought to be able to provide us with a restroom.
Well,
Too.
that's not on them. That's more on the county,
Yeah.
because I
But
mean
guess
they're kind
what?
of restricted.
I read what the actual restriction is. It just says if you don't have staff enough to maintain the cleanliness of the restroom, then you can say you can't allow restrooms. But it's not really saying don't allow restrooms. It's just saying if you can't maintain them with some degree of cleanliness. But if you don't let anyone use restrooms anywhere, aren't you going to contribute to unsanitary conditions everywhere you go?
It's a good fair point. It's a fair
Yeah.
point.
You don't, and then people are starting to relieve themselves wherever they can in the bushes, or some don't even bother going to bush. They just do it like right in the bus stop, and who wants to have to contend with that all the time?
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, I worked at a Big Five in Blossom Hill, and it was near an encampment.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of people in there's a back alley. A lot of people who were unhoused. They have nowhere to go to the bathroom, so they would go. There'd be a lot of feces and all that other
Yeah.
stuff in there, and it's very unsanitary. It's not right. I mean, it's not any way for a person to live. Like it's not.
Right. But people get to stop needing to use the bathroom or relieve themselves just because you want to say they're not allowed to.
Yeah.
So, come on, reality. Let's have some reality, not same old myopic, self-centered mindset of the comfortable people thinking everything's hunky-dory because they isolate themselves and close off their awareness of those less fortunate than them. Now, so those would be New Year's resolutions we'd like to say. But another thing is they built. See, now there are these hotels, so we
Okay.
want to give credit that
Yeah,
a lot of people
let's
have been
give.
gotten to be in those hotels.
Well, actually, pause. There have some things that us and other people and other organizations they have done to help improve and helped with the people in unhoused situations, and their work shouldn't go unnoticed. So if you want to say a couple of those things that happened that occurred that helped out, John, if you want to point
Well,
those
I
out.
guess there has been a big effort to be less retaliatory to the homeless and to the people in the camps. So
Mhm.
we want to give credit for that
Okay.
to the city governments. So, but basically, what we need to do is have the city council people who are the least involved with any of this stuff, often are there holding, the reins and then wanting to start catering to the NIMBYs again and thinking, oh, we can't, we might have to give in and let the NIMBYs let us start doing more sweeps. So there's that threat, Meanwhile, the COVID thing isn't gone away.
Mm.
So it isn't like, oh, now it's okay to just start sweeping and causing everybody to go mingling.
Only 2 million people have gotten vaccines in the whole United States. So I mean that's nothing.
Yeah. So, yeah, kudos to that they stopped doing retaliatory sweeps for the most part, thankfully, and they've had this thing called Beautify. So they go around and they'll give out. They have these green plastic bags they give out that say Beautify, and then they give them out however many anybody wants, and that's a step forward because a lot of them wouldn't ever have anything like very good bags to bag up the garbage. So this is a good step forward, and then they put them out there, and they're clearly a city provided bag. So,
Who's doing this?
that's part of the housing department, a thing called Beautify.
Okay.
So, and then
Is that part
when
of
they
the
come
council?
around from time to time, the staff people will just they'll ask the people, okay, we can take stuff away today. Just make sure we know what you want to get rid of and what you don't want to get rid of. So they don't just start manhandling their stuff, which is a big step forward.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah. And they've authorized a bunch of meals to be provided so that any of these advocate people, different groups that will want to go around and distribute food to the different unhoused people, they can let the city know, and they'll be provided food to go give out. So, and that's definitely a lot better thing. It's just we're not sure if it's enough. No, it's a little bit hit and miss because these are all mostly volunteer groups, so you don't necessarily have a group designated for every area that needs it, and that's maybe the downside. You don't have.
But it's a step in the right direction,
Yeah, but it is
for sure.
Yeah.
A step in the right direction,
Yeah.
which
So we gotta be thankful for those changes. Yeah. Now, something was cool. They got a donation of a bunch of good products for the groups to give out to the homeless people from the census people. They gave them a bunch of knit caps with flashlight built into the front, so they were given those to give out, and there were also some types of lanterns and
that's good.
other blanket materials and sleeping bags. So a lot of that stuff has been made available. So that's something to be.
That's really good. Yeah, that's really good. What group is it? Who group did this?
Oh, it's just from the census people because they had a thing sometime of employing some unhoused people to help go around doing the census of the unhoused population when the census was being done several months ago. Yeah,
it's really good.
But anyway, I had another thing I was thinking of saying a little something about.
What was that?
Oh well, a lot of they have this thing a lot of people don't know about if you're in the general public. For anybody to get who might qualify for some of these voucher programs where completely low or no income people can get vouchers for free or very low income or housing. So, but it's all administered under sort of a national thing that's kind of directed, like part of HUD. HUD is pretty much provides all the money basically behind all these shelter programs. I mean, uh, voucher programs and stuff. So a lot of it's really money from HUD. So the different agencies in this different cities that are most of these nonprofit groups that run the different care providing service groups, then basically a lot of them are they get paid to administer this resources that are kind of really from HUD. So one of the things, they have this thing called the vulnerability study, which is called VISPADAT. And so usually you have some caseworker or somebody like that, and then sometimes they'll do an outreach thing going out to people, unhoused people. Sometimes it's being administered maybe through some of the shelters might then connect people with caseworkers or other staff people to administer this test called the VISPADAT. So basically it asks the people a whole bunch of questions all about their life experience. And like, have they ever, how have they had to be going to the hospital a lot? Have they had a lot of pressing health needs or mental health needs? Then it asks stuff like, are you involved in the drug use or mental health issues? And then it asks, have you sometimes ever had to maybe trade sexual favors for money or food or anything? Or have you had to do things like that just to survive? So the more you say you have had to do any of these things or have experienced it, the higher your vulnerability rating is. Then if it's high enough, you do get to qualify for like free housing or else very low income housing.
Wow, that's really cool.
But the trouble with that vulnerability study thing is they don't allow anybody else who might know the person's history better to help the questionnaire get answered. And so some people are not used to where you're supposed to say everything you do that maybe is really sort of approved of by society.
Yeah.
So
they're kind
usually you're sort of trying to hide that you do these things or that you experience these things. So in this case, all of a sudden, the more you say, yes, I've been sexually abused, yes, I've sometimes allow myself to be exploited for sexual favors or for drug use, then in this case, all of a sudden, the more you can say any of those things have been your situation, the higher you rate to get the free housing or the super low income housing. But most people, when usually it's something you want to not admit you do, it's hard for a lot of people to suddenly turn around and go, now I'm here talking to some stranger who doesn't know me from Adam, but I'm going to tell him every last detail of my, the weird side of my life.
Exactly. It's hard to open up for people, especially because it's a very traumatic part of their past, and it's stuff that they don't feel comfortable talking about, and even just telling them for that, like, it's something, especially trauma, is something that you don't want to open up about, and I feel like exactly you're saying, it'll be hard for those people who've experienced it to say it because they don't want to put out in the open, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then some people who have mental illness, there's one condition called anosognosia, which means some people don't really have an awareness of themselves as having a problem. They don't think, I'm mentally ill, and they don't think, I'm mentally ill, and I know I'm this category of mental illness that some psychologist told me I am, and then go around and think of themselves in those terms. So then the questionnaire says, so then they may not even feel like they even have experienced these things, because their awareness is a whole different thing. So then they won't say, yes, I use drugs. Yes, I sometimes have maybe participated in sexual activity for favors, for drugs, or for resources. And oh yes, and oh I've been abused. Oh yes, I've sometimes been the victim of violence. Blah blah blah. So there you go. There goes that person's chance to get the help they need because the way this test's set up. You know.
Yes, I feel like it should be. They shouldn't. They shouldn't really have to ask some of these questions because they gotta know, they'll be aware, but at the same time, these people they're not gonna tell you that. They're not gonna want to tell you that. So I feel like they should come up with a better way of doing these
Yeah.
surveys, doing these tests, because a lot of these stuff is private and a lot of people they don't want to tell you.
Yeah, and then we found out from some people involved in this sort of social work situation, there's another kind of test that the name is slightly different, which in other counties they allowed to give, which lets advocates or family members or other people kind of the help when the survey is being given answer the questions
Oh, really?
correctly. But they don't. But then we found out in this county they don't allow that kind of test. So talk about a stumbling block.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense. They should definitely allow that just because people will open up more too if they have people that are comfortable
Yeah.
with them, and you're not gonna do it to some random stranger. Like they want to feel comfortable with
Yeah.
something so to go in their history and to a random person you don't know and not
Yeah.
comfortable with that. That's
Yeah, and it's called the SPUD app, I think. So that one. But now
okay.
after first, some people I knew were getting hopeful that that would help mentally ill loved ones. And then they found out they won't administer that test in this county. So that
Okay.
was the thing I wanted to share.
Oh, that's good. If you have any more news, John, you want to share with, please share.
Okay. Well, I just saw the movie A Christmas Carol again the other day. You know, based on that whole Charles Dickens story, which it has a lot to say about all these things about the the upscale people, status levels,
1%.
and all that. You know, and the 1% and the higher levels and class systems and everything else that are playing into things a lot in our country too. We really have a lot of classism in our country just as much, even though it's kind of hidden. And so it had, and then so it had Ebenezer Scrooge. At one point, some people were coming up trying to get him to make a donation for this charitable organization to give more food and give supplements and help to the poor people at Christmas time. And then he says, I already paid taxes. I already paid taxes for the workhouses and for the sort of the version that they had in those days of welfare, kind of like providing sort of like stuff similar to what they have nowadays, like foster homes, foster care, uh, juvenile halls, jails,
Mm-hmm.
prisons,
Yeah.
and everything else. So he said, "Oh, I already pay my taxes. What more do you want from me?" And then they were saying, "Well, a lot of these people." He says, "Isn't there? If they need money, why can't they work?" And they say, "Well, not all these people can work, or there isn't necessarily the work they can do available." And then he says, "Well, then maybe if they die, that'll reduce the surplus population, you know." And then
It's messed up.
yeah. So then later on in the show, as these spirits visit him and they get him to review and face his past and realize he does have a heart. He's just shut it all off. And shut it all off with making pursuit of money his only interest and pursuit of capitalism. So then he eventually gets in touch with that and then feels ashamed that he was saying those harsh things before and heartless, comments about
Yeah.
workhouses and reduce the surplus population. So I think that thinking still kind of pervades our society now, I believe, and maybe not so much in the forefront, but
isn't
and then they also think, oh well, we already pay for, or we pay taxes, and then our city and county governments, they they hire all these nonprofit groups to run all the different social programs. So why do we have to do anything more? It seems like uh, that should all be taken care of. We have all that in place. So why are you bugging us still that not enough's being done? Well, that's because those that's out of sight, out of mind. All those agencies. Um, that's just another way of trying to pass the buck, kind of. Stop realizing you're a human being and caring about others is part of what being a human being is, and part of what being a civilized person is, and what a
exactly
community is.
100%. And just to wrap all that up, it's funny how even in kids movies like, they bring up, or children's tales, they bring up so much valuable lessons and so many things that going on in the background. As you get older, you realize what truly the meaning is. But after I rewatched Christmas Kale, like rewatching that movie as well, and seeing all the things that you brought up, it's pretty crazy that um, there's so many subtle hints towards that, and how prevalent it is even now. You know.
Yeah, because in a long time ago, before this whole housing crisis has come down the pike, and then adding to that this COVID crisis. I'm sure we all thought, oh well, our society is so much more advanced now than they were back in Dickens' time. But now, though it's advanced in all sorts of ways, technologically and materially and everything else, but it can easily lose track of the human element, and then that. So then our society, in a way, is backsliding, becoming more like that era, with the more separation of classes and, upscale people not wanting to even
Yeah.
associate with anybody else.
And we're just losing touch with everybody as well. Everything's being online, so we're kind of
Yeah.
losing that heart.
Yeah, that's right, too. That's one thing I think is sort of weird is there was this whole movement like towards everything being digital and all that, and throughout the last 10, 20 years, and then a lot of regular hot buildings and businesses and stuff already were a lot of times taking the fall and crumbling and going out of business, and then we have it even more now, while all the online providing companies and services are like booming. So that's a bizarre situation where some of this seems like it's just allowing the digital divide to get that much more intense and prevalent.
Exactly. And um, just for some closing comments, uh, we just hope that everybody here listens to the podcast, goes out there and helps us with these, not only with these resolutions for these changes to occur, but also help improve what's going on right now. Um, and I hope with this podcast, we educated you on some things that are occurring and some things we can improve upon. And as always,
I got one more thing I could add.
go ahead.
Oh yeah, I mean, thinking now we know a lot of the people in the community of what they call NIMBYs, not in my backyard. This sort of, hey, the homeless people are mostly just a big pain and just a big irritation, and they're counterproductive to the progress of our upscale society. So we know a lot of them in all their spare time, or we'll be calling up and sending emails to all the city council and city government people every time we turn around, or you can go on next door and see how they're going on and on about fighting against the homeless people, etc. So any of you, whenever you can, let's give some feedback that presents a humanistic side to things and a caring side to things, and not just accepting status quo of not in my backyard.
Awesome. As always, the power is with the people. Hope you guys have a great, wonderful rest of your day, and see you guys next week.
All right.